Hey there, Playbookers. It's Todd here with the Church Playbook, and I'm here to answer your questions about some of the top challenges that we as pastors face in leading churches of under 200. And, I always try and talk about things that are relevant to what's going on in my life, because I have a feeling if something's going on in my life as a pastor, there's a chance, pretty good chance, that you might have to deal with it too, or you're already dealing with it. And so just for a minute today, I want to talk about how do you handle criticism. Many of you that watch my videos, you've already picked up my book, The Church Playbook, which if you haven't, you can get a free copy. I just ask that you pay for the shipping and handling, but you can go to thechurchplaybook.com and get that. And so what happens is us as leaders, you'll read through, you hear the 6 steps, blah, 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 and you are so excited about what you believe God can and wants to do through your church that you'll get to work. You'll start implementing things. And when you change things, one of the immediate responses, or really reactions, a response is something that's thought through, a reaction is something that's immediate and not thought through. But one of the immediate reactions is criticism. Pastor, I feel like you're changing. Pastor, you're changing things up around here. And, you changed the way that we were, the seating arrangement. You changed the music. You changed the clothes that you were preaching in. Just surface level stuff can bring about some of the deepest criticism. And I am pretty well acquainted with criticism these days. You can see I'm not a Baltimore Ravens fan. I'm actually a Chicago Bears fan. But the Santee Ravens, this is the Pop Warner team that I coach. And I've been coaching with the Ravens now for 10 seasons. And for probably 7 of those 10 seasons, I was the head coach. This year, I'm mentoring a head coach, a first-year head coach. And so, but as the head coach, man, you get all kinds of criticism. Well, why are we running that offense? Why did he call that play? Why wasn't that player where he was supposed to be? It all comes back on the coach. And it's funny, the people that are in the stands, it's like they know more about the sport than you do. At least that's what they say. That's what they think. And it's pretty similar with the people that go to our church. They sit in the seats. A lot of them, they're not giving. They're not serving. They don't even, necessarily show up, regularly. But, man, they're the first ones, it seems like, to criticize anything that you do that they don't like. And again, it can be surface level stuff. Well, pastor's not wearing a tie anymore. We're watering down the gospel. Or, pastor says that, we're not doing Sunday school, or we got rid of this particular Sunday school class and we're trading it in for home groups or small groups. We're watering down the gospel. I don't believe in the leadership abilities of our pastor anymore. And so criticism comes in all kinds of ways. Now, here's the thing. And you've heard it said that if you don't want to be criticized, it's simple. Don't think anything. Don't say anything. Don't do anything. So as a leader, here's the thing. You have a bias for action. You are biased towards action. That's like almost the definition of a leader. Leaders got to define what the current reality is, paint a picture of the preferred future, cast that vision to the church, and then it's like, let's get started, let's get going. And so as a leader, you're gonna be criticized because you think things, you say things, and you do things. Now, I do want to, before I talk about how to deal with people's criticism, or at least how I'm dealing with it these days, and it's working for me, and hopefully it'll help you too, is I do want to say this, and I don't know who it's original with, but listen. If you live by people's applause, you will die with their criticism. If you live by people's applause, and you know what I mean. You preach one heck of a message, You want to chest bump the worship leader. You want to drive one more lap around the parking lot and give everyone high fives because you know, like God spoke through you. It was a great sermon. As people are walking out, oh, Pastor, that was the best message I've ever heard. And that makes you feel good because, and that's not a bad thing, by the way. It makes you feel good because you worked hard to connect God's word to your congregation, and God used you. It feels good to be used by God. It feels good to see immediate fruit. It feels good to get the pat on the back or the word of encouragement, because there's so much about our job that's not encouraging during certain seasons. And so here's the thing. If you get addicted to other people's applause, you will die when people criticize you. And so I guess, my first word of encouragement to you today would be just hold on to people's words loosely. Hold on to them with open hands. Don't grip them. Don't let it plant a seed of dependency in you, because you do not want to depend on other people's encouragement. You want to depend on God's encouragement. So if you live by people's praise, if you live by people's applause, you will die by their criticism. Now, here's a couple of thoughts that I've just been working through for the last several weeks. And I'll tell you what, I pastor a church. I'm in the trenches every day, just like you. I also run a couple of businesses, the Church Playbook being one of them. And so whenever you put yourself out there, I'll tell you what, 98% of the people that respond to the different posts that I put out there on Facebook and Instagram are just overwhelmingly positive. There's that 2% though. And here's the thing. You could have 98 people tell you what a great leader you are, what a great pastor you are, what a great man of God or woman of God, husband, wife, whatever. And then 2 people tell you that they could take you or leave you, or they don't like you, or they don't like when you do X, Y, or Z. It's so much easier to focus on the 2 people than the 98. And so I just want to say, listen, I get it. And so here's some things that I've been thinking about as I've been pastoring recently, because I've just in the last week I've had a little bit of criticism, and then of course, with the Church Playbook. So first thing that I just want to throw out there for you is this. Not every criticism needs to be responded to. Not every criticism needs to be defended. And it's hard because someone said something that's not true. And here's the thing. When word gets around, other people that are listening to someone else run their mouth, see, people are smart. And so when it gets back to you, when someone tells you, oh yeah, Johnny was saying, this about you, and when you say, oh, well, that's too bad, that's not true, and you leave it at that, and you don't curse Johnny's name, you don't say, oh yeah, well, let me tell you something about Johnny, because, if you really knew about Johnny, then you wouldn't even take what he says seriously. Well, here's the thing. When you don't defend yourself, it actually makes Johnny look bad. Because you don't have to show up to every fight that you're invited to. You just don't. And what it does is first of all, you're busy. Pastor, you're busy. Okay? So when you don't show up to every fight that you're invited to, it actually communicates that criticism wasn't very serious to begin with. Okay? So not every piece of criticism needs to be responded to. I say every now and then, I don't do it very often, while I'm preaching, and it's not a point in the sermon, I don't make it a big deal. Sometimes I'll just say, because I'm sure this has happened to you. We have little connection cards where people can, fill out the front side: name, address, email, phone number, how they want to get involved. On the back side, it's blank. It's really for people to write down prayer requests or to sign up for events. And every now and then, it doesn't happen very often, but every now and then we'll get someone to write a comment on the back of the card that says, oh, the music's too loud. Or I don't like how the pastor was dressed. Or, I really wish we would read from the King James only, or whatever. That last comment doesn't get said in my church, but I mean, it's a comment, and here's the thing: it's anonymous. So I'll say in the sermon every now and then, hey, when we get an anonymous comment, we don't even read it. Like, we don't take it serious; we just throw it away. Now, every comment that gets left and someone signs their name to it, 9 times out of 10, I will personally call that person and explain why the air conditioning is on, or where they're sitting in relation to the vent. Okay. I had to address why we hired a certain person instead of someone else. Every time someone signs their name, I will personally respond. Or I will forward it to one of my staff members who will personally respond. But unsigned comments, ain't nobody got time for that. Okay? So not every criticism needs to be responded to. Now, here's the next thing. Not every offense is a sin. Just because someone gets offended by something that you said or something that you did does not mean that you said or did something wrong. I mean, just look at the first 5 books of the Bible, or, Exodus through Deuteronomy. Moses is leading the people out of Egypt into the Promised Land, across the Red Sea. And it's like, man, every time they stopped to catch their breath, 2 million people were complaining. Moses was leading them. Here's the thing: you're a leader. Now, sometimes your people will be inspired and will want to follow. Other times, every time you say, hey, we got to do this as a church, we got to do that, and people are like, man, pastors, got a wild hair today, or I don't know what pastor's up to, but he's kind of getting a little crazy. People will find a chance to complain, and when they complain, it's because they're offended. 9 times out of 10, people's offenses aren't your responsibility. People get offended about everything these days. Now, Matthew chapter 18 says, if someone is offended, if your brother offends you, you need to go to your brother. So if someone in your church is legitimately offended by you, something that you said or did, it's on them to come to you. And pastor, you need to listen to it. But just because you hear through the grapevine that so-and-so is offended, not every criticism, not every offense needs your response. If someone has the courage to sign the back of a connection card, if someone has the courage to email you and say, hey, pastor, I've got an issue. Can you help me with it? Can we meet over lunch? Can we meet over coffee? And can you help me understand why our church is doing X, Y, or Z? Then that's a brilliant opportunity for you to lead. But not every offense needs your response. Not every criticism needs your response. Now, just this last week, I had 2 people had some serious criticisms for me. One of them, we had one of our staff members, very, very part-time facilities staff member, quit quit via text, didn't leave no notice. I mean, it was just, they're done. Well, you know, and he's young in his 20s, and his mom was so mad that she emailed me about, you know, what a poor leader I am, what a poor pastor I am, and I mean, you know, what are you going to do? And so I responded and said, oh man, I was really sad when I got the message that so-and-so decided to quit. Really enjoyed working with them. You know, I hope you'll believe the best about me. And she came straight back. Watch this. She said two things. Number one, I don't believe you. Number two, get a new haircut. And so at the point where she started to attack me personally, then I was like, okay, you know what? I've responded with grace. She wanted to make it personal. I thanked her for her time and I moved on. I don't need to wrestle with her about that stuff. Okay? Another piece of criticism I got was from someone that the criticism wasn't even about me. They were actually in a place of desperation and they just lashed out. Now, within an hour, I was on their doorstep because I've known this family for 6 years and they're good friends of mine. They lashed out of desperation. Within an hour, I was on their doorstep with a gift that would help them and sat down and I both listened to their concerns and I said, hey, you can't react that way. Okay? So not every criticism needs a response, but when you're going to respond, here's two things you got to do. You respond head on. You don't beat around the bush. You don't dance around the issue. I showed up on their doorstep because people will say things over computer, over social media, over text that they won't say to your face unless they really mean it. So if you're going to deal with someone's criticism, if it's an offense that you actually need to deal with it head on. Number one, deal with it head on, deal with it face to face. Number two, deal with it with grace. You've got to be gracious. Just this morning in my quiet time, I was reading in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, and the Apostle Paul says this. He says, we bless those who curse us. We are patient with those who abuse us. We appeal gently when evil things are said about us. And so, pastor, leader, you're going to be criticized because you think things, you say things, and you do things. Not every criticism, not every offense needs your response. But when they do, deal with it head on and deal with it graciously. Listen, I hope that helps. Like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, and that'll certainly help other pastors be able to view this video, and we'll see you soon.